Submitted for your approval. Submitted for your approval.
Another dimension.
Submitted for your approval.
Another dimension.
Submitted for your
Shadow.
approval.
Another dimension.
Submitted for your
Shadow.
approval.
Another dimension. Self.
Submitted for your
Shadow.
approval.
The Twilight Zone.
Submitted for your approval.
The Twilight Zone.
Submitted for your approval.
The Twilight Zone.
Hello, hello, hello. You're listening to a podcast not only of sound but also of mind. It's Time to Rewind is a podcast that takes a journey into a wondrous land of time loops whose boundaries are that of imagination. I'm your host, Bubbawheat, and each episode my guest and I explore these time loops one loop at a time. This stop is Trapped in the Twilight Zone, and this is the 14th and final stop at 2020's Season 2, Episode 9, Try, starting at 39 minutes and 41 seconds, with Mark watching Claudia catch herself before getting hit by a truck, and ending at the end of the episode with Jordan Peele's closing narration and the end credits. Here with me once again is my guest Lisa Leheey from the Siblist and Between the Scares. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Very excited to talk about the last bit here.
Yeah, so let's go ahead and jump right into it then. You know, this is just, we just get a couple minutes, and at first
the next try.
yeah, it feels like he's cashing in on his promise that he's going to keep coming after her over and over again.
Well, he's right back where he started.
Yeah, so did you think, watching this the first time, that he was going to do something?
In this next try, you mean?
Yeah.
Honestly, I thought he was just going to walk away. Be like, I need to do something else this time around.
Oh, so you did think that at the end of that, even though he promised, like, you know, next time you're, I'll be ready for you. And then Claudia says, well, I'm just going to have to kick your ass every single time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, we know that he has already shoved her in front of that truck, whether he meant to or not, because of the montage of his various tries. I feel like he just sort of is like, you know, I'm gonna do something else. Like, I just need a break this round. My nose is still a little sore, even though it shouldn't be. You know, I just feel like he needs a moment.
So do you think that this is the first time that he didn't try to stop Claudia from getting hit by the truck?
No. Because I think after a couple of hundred attempts with her, he might have, because one of the things I wondered is, well, maybe he's not stuck in this day because of her. Maybe he's supposed to do something else. And so I figured that logically he would have thought of that as well. So I feel like he would have tried at least once to just not even interact with her and see what happened. What that turned out to be or what kind of result happened is from that, I don't know.
Yeah, my reading of this is a little bit different. Like I came to the theory that he didn't even meet Claudia until he was into like a couple hundred loops into his day, and my guess is that the first time that he saw her, he saved her from the truck, or he did something, like he saw this and he interacted in such a way where she didn't get hit by the truck, or maybe possibly even the first time he interacted and she did get hit by the truck, but because of his interaction with her. And so he decided that he needed to save her, and I feel like as soon as he saw that moment, that he latched onto it and decided that was like him saving her was important.
Yeah, certainly could be.
And personally, I think that this is the first time that he actually didn't interfere at all. And then he sees that, oh, she actually didn't need his help to save her. And I feel like that's, oh, maybe she actually can take care of herself. She doesn't need a man to step in to save her.
Mm-hmm.
And he has that little, like, smile to it, like, Like she actually looks at him and sees him and smiles, and then he has this little smile back, and then he decides to walk away. And I honestly feel like that is just a little bit of him learning a lesson from all of this.
Oh, wouldn't that be nice? After the thousandth and something try, it finally kicks in there, or maybe punches in there. Something has stuck. And
I almost see like him, you know, quote unquote, rescuing her from the truck is like I almost look at it as like a physical embodiment of mansplaining. He's like, well, actually, I saved you from this truck.
Therefore, you owe me.
Yeah, but not only that, but he didn't actually save her from the truck, because she wouldn't have gotten hit by the truck if he hadn't interfered at all. But he doesn't see that. He just sees his own perspective.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely true. Yeah, that's a good point.
And I do kind of like that, even though he didn't interact with her at all, he still went to this spot to see her. And they did like share this slight moment, this smile to each other.
It is kind of this like, I'm still here. Like, I still could. I'm here, I know you, I see you. So he's still exercising that power he has, that manipulation. Mm-hmm. Whether he chooses to act on it further. But he still is, you know, compelled to be there and to make that eye contact and to say, nope, still here. Back again, I was right, you know?
Yeah, even though she doesn't know him at all, like he knows her, and yeah, you know, what you say, I think strikes a chord, and I feel like there could be a bit of, she smiled at me, you know, I still got it.
Yeah. Yep, maybe I'll try again another time or something. Yeah. He's still the nice guy, and she forgot everything, and I've got another try in front of me. It's interesting.
Yeah, maybe I'll come back here in another 100 days or so and try again after going off and doing something else.
Yeah. And I mean, there's that. I think that the fact that he's there, the fact that his assumptions have been proven true, that, yup, here we go, we're going to try this again. And, you know, there's that really chilling line when they're interacting earlier in the episode when he says, "You're lucky I'm nice."
Yes.
And it was like, oh, no, you're walk away. Because, I mean, I actually wrote that down in my notes in all capital letters. It was like, I'm sorry, what? Like, DJ record scratch on that one. You're lucky I'm nice. Because immediately it's, oh, no, you're not. Because if you had that thought, you're not nice.
Yeah, I talked about it in an earlier episode, but I didn't talk with you. He definitely embodies what's referred to as like the nice guy syndrome.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's the scariest kind, I think.
Yeah, because he embodies this typically an internet interaction where they exemplify this persona of being a nice person. But there's the underlying element of entitledness where it's like,
yeah,
I'm a nice guy, so I deserve a reward. I deserve what I want because I'm being nice, rather than just being nice for nice sake.
Yeah, because if you're nice, you don't have that thought. You know, like that's not when that ever came out of his mouth, I went, oh, there it is. And it makes me wonder if the writers experienced that line, because it's such a line. Well, it just goes right down your back.
Yeah, I don't have his name in front of me, but it this episode was written by one writer and it was a guy. The director was a woman, but the writer was a man.
Maybe she knows, or maybe he knows somebody who had that line delivered to them, because that line was delivered so well, and it's such a chilling set of words that I just feel like that's life. That came from somebody's experience. I'd be willing to be Bet I will personally give you $1,000, Bubba, if you can show me that line was actually delivered to someone.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised at all. And then we wrap up the episode with Jordan Peele's closing narration, where he mentions, he ends it with Claudia's leaving Mark Wheeler to spend an eternity in a prison of his own design. The inability, no matter how many tries he's given, to see beyond himself. An endless loop of solitary confinement here in the Twilight Zone.
Yep. I wrote that line down myself. I loved it.
Yeah, and I think we've discussed, all the elements of this closing narration in the last episode, and it really does get to the heart of what Mark's problem is and how he is more or less trapped. He's trapped himself in this endless time loop because he's not able to actually see himself. He doesn't see Claudia as a person. He sees her as a means to an end. He sees her as this potential for a relationship, but ultimately a potential goal to get him to escape this time loop.
She's a conquest. She's just a tool, something that will help him get out, which has nothing to do with why he's there to begin with. Like the one thing he needs to do is the one thing he will never do. And she even gives him that answer. You should see this from my perspective. And he immediately turns it around and says, what about my point of view? What about my perspective? And he's just never... That one line is the key, and he doesn't see it. He's not going to see it. And I think it's interesting to think about how she studies this idea of reincarnation, and she's so focused on the idea of being caught in a cage. And, when you're in a cage, interestingly enough, I was reading Roxane Gay recently, and in a completely different context, she's talking about cages and how the purpose of a cage is to contain you, but you can see outside a cage. You can see what it is you want or need to escape the cage, but you can't reach it. And I think that's really something that's going on here, where he's in this cage. They want different kinds of freedoms, Claudia says. His freedom is right in front of him, literally, and he can't reach it. For whatever reason, he can't see it, he can't access it, and he will just be stuck in that cage.
Yeah, and I think that ties back to the sculpture of the bird and the clam. And there are two different perspectives on that sculpture, because Mark sees himself as the bird, and from his point of view, he is conquering this trap and saving all the people that are trapped in this time loop. And she sees it as that she is the eagle, the bird. I forget, I don't remember if it's an eagle. And she is she's freeing the creatures that are trapped in this clam, and like in a way she is helping to free Mark, which is the one that's actually trapped in this time loop. And I think that those are the two different perspectives, and Mark can't see the other perspective, and that's why he's trapped in this time loop and not, because he feels like he's the one that is free and that he's trying to save everybody else, where he's the one that's actually trapped.
Yeah, very much. I mean, you look at this idea of what it is that Claudia is studying, and in the beginning of the episode, she talks about sort of breaking out of her own cage. She's maybe out of a bad relationship, or she's feeling isolated, or whatever it is. We all have those moments where we feel like we're kind of stuck in a rut, and she's looking to kind of open herself up a bit. She's an empathetic person, And I think that she looks at these masks and she wonders about reincarnation, and she talks about compartmentalization and how she's going to look at these masks in a different way. Like, what are the purposes of them? And she's very metacognitive about how she's looking at these masks and how she's analyzing them from the very beginning. And then you've got this idea where the structure of this story focuses on Claudia. She is our protagonist at first. She's the one with whom we're aligned. And then when Mark comes into the picture, he's a secondary character. He's interesting. He's somebody perhaps she's interested in. And then there comes a point when we realize his secret, where he reveals information, where we start catching on to those clues, where we start picking up on the watch and some of the things we talked about in the last episode. But we switch alignment when we realize that he's trapped. And now the viewer's empathy goes to Mark, who's stuck, and oh gosh, how do we get him out of there, and what do we do? And, you know, immediately we're thinking about him now, because she's just a normal everyday person. He's now the interesting one. He's now the person who needs our concern. And then it switches again when he becomes more of the villain and he becomes the predator. And so now we're back with Claudia again. And I think the whole episode is an exercise in empathy, which is the bottom line, what he doesn't have. We feel for more than one character throughout the episode. Otherwise, the episode isn't successful.
Yeah, and the entire episode is primarily focused on just these two characters. There are other people throughout the episode, but none of them have more than one or two lines, and they're all just throwaway lines. Just, you know, like enjoy the museum, or we think he'll pull through, and you know, at the end, do you need some help with the security guards? And that's just about the only other lines from other characters.
Now, are you the kind of person where, with those smaller characters, does your brain drift into wondering what their lives are like after those moments?
It's sometimes, although I haven't really thought about it too much with regards to this specific episode. It's because I think that, especially the way that this episode is crafted and how everything is literally focused on these two characters, so much so that oftentimes the background is actually out of focus, to where we can't even see the masks or the art fixtures, because they're out of focus and blurry, and only the two characters, and a lot of times even just one of the two main characters are clear and in focus in the camera.
Mm-hmm. I wonder sometimes, like, if just my general empathetic nature, because I am more, I sometimes to a fault, I'm a very empathetic person. I did it specifically with two individuals. I mentioned in the last episode the gentleman whose nephew is feeling better, and how Mark just kind of like throws out, "Hey, how's your nephew doing?" "Oh, he's better, thanks. Do I know you?" And then Mark just kind of shepherds Claudia away. And I was like, what's the rest of that guy's day like? I also thought about that with the guard named George that Mark mentions and mocks for the fact that he's hard of hearing. And I thought about, my brain just kind of branched off into, what is it like to be a museum guard who's hard of hearing? Do you take that job because because you're hard of hearing and it's a quiet environment, therefore it's going to be easier for you to pay attention? Or is it because it's generally a visual sort of job, and so he doesn't necessarily have to rely on his hearing? And then I start thinking about the kids who are screwing around, and do kids torment this guard at all when they realize, like, this is what my brain does legitimately. And so I wonder, like, that's why I asked you the question, because this episode is so focused on these two, but it's also so focused on empathy. I wonder if that's what my brain was responding to, where you have these secondary characters, but they are characters who, this is so weird and like a certain meta level, but they have their own lives too. So it's kind of like, well, what's their life like? I've always been fascinated driving along and you get caught in traffic and you look into the car, a couple of spots ahead of you and you go, I wonder what they're listening to. Or, you can see the dog acting up in the back seat and you're like, I wonder if they're in a rush and where are they go? I've always been fascinated by those kinds of stories that I make up in my head.
Have you ever seen Run Lola Run?
Oh, I love Run Lola Run.
Yeah,
Yes.
that reminds me of those little interstitials where they actually do take the time to expand on one of those random characters and takes you off on this, 10-second journey into the one random side character's future.
Yeah, it's just, I don't know why my brain does that so much, but I do think it's an empathetic element.
Yeah, I think Amelie does that as well in a couple moments, although it's been forever since I've seen Amelie.
Yeah, I don't know that one as well. I used to teach Run Lola Run, so that one I can go backwards and forwards on, no pun intended. But I just sort of like that whole element of it. I don't know, I'm just always fascinated by the stories I don't necessarily know or experience, which just is another tangent that I'm not going to open up because it'll take up way too much time again.
Yeah, and I'm definitely looking forward to covering Run Lola Run on a future season or potentially as like just 3 hiatus episodes, since that would be a quick and easy one to do with just the 3 loops.
I don't know if it's so easy, but I like the idea.
But I think that's about all I have for this last moment of this episode. Was there anything else that you wanted to talk about?
No, I think we've covered it. I've gotten through any and all of the quotes that I wrote down, including the one that went in capital letters. I think that kind of thing is interesting, and this is a really cool episode. I'm happy I got to talk about this one with you.
Yeah, so one thing that I haven't asked you yet, what is your history with the Twilight Zone as a whole?
So my father is the bedrock of most of my movie and classic knowledge, because he was a huge fan of the Twilight Zone and all of the different times when there are various marathons. If it's on, it's on. We're watching it. And some of my best classic memories of first becoming glued to the television because of a movie or something have been with my father. And just watching those episodes with him and, in fact, goofing on myself for the classic episode that you wanted to talk about for today. I'll bring my father back up again. I won't go there yet, but thinking about because my father passed away in May of this year. So thinking about, getting a chance to talk about the Twilight Zone is a nice way to kind of honor him and look at it. And between Twilight Zone and Night Gallery, I mean, it was always on at some point in my house. So that's where it really started with me.
Yeah, and I think that brings us to the episode the classic episode that I wanted to discuss for today's episode, getting a chance to look at more of the classic Twilight Zone episodes. And I chose this one because, for one, it was one of the episodes recommended to me, and also because I think it is, whenever somebody brings up the Twilight Zone, this is probably one of the top 5 episodes that comes up in terms of the most well-known, and that's Nightmare at 20,000 Feet, the one with William Shatner and the gremlin on the wing of the plane.
Mm-hmm.
And
the fuzzy panda bear gremlin.
Yes.
Looks like a Monchichi doll from, way back when.
Oh, yes, definitely. Although he's got a bit more of a smushed face.
That's true. Well, when it's up against a plain window, I guess it's going to be more smooshed.
And this... I can't remember if this is an episode that I've actually watched start to finish. I know I've definitely have been aware of this episode. I think I may have seen, I believe the movie remade this.
Yeah, the John Lithgow version.
Yeah. I believe I saw that version. There's, of course, the classic Treehouse of Horror episode that homaged this. So I pretty much knew start to finish. Although I was a little bit surprised with the wife character. I didn't. I don't think I anticipated her being as big of a character as she is. I always just thought it was William Shatner on the plane by himself. So that was a bit of a surprise. And I think, unfortunately, just because of how parodied this is and the whole Michigan J. Frog-ness of it all,
Yes.
I had a hard time taking it seriously.
I love that reference. Yeah, it's definitely it's kind of like the episode, both excitement and groaning. You know, it's kind of like, oh, we're going to watch the Twilight Zone. Yay! What episode are we going to watch? Oh, okay, I've seen this one a million times. It's such a classic, and it's just so good. But then you still, like, you watch it, and there's always a little something there to it. So my husband and I were watching it last night in prep for talking about it today, and he watched it. I don't know that he's ever seen it. Because like you, he knows of it. I mean, it's everywhere. It's so parodied on so many different levels, on so many different shows, that you kind of know it even though you may not have seen it. And he's sitting here and he's like, is that William Shatner? And it's like, are you joking? Really? No, is that William Shatner? Yes, that's Shatner. You didn't know Shatner was in this? And, you know, my husband's a big Star Trek fan. And I'm thinking, how did you miss this? But I think it was just he's never sat down to actually see the episode. Meanwhile, here's me watching this thing and wondering why the passengers are facing the back of the plane or why the wing is on backwards. Because I'm looking at this thing and I'm saying, well, the engines are facing the wrong way. And so I'm watching this and I actually Googled this. Like, this makes me wonder what's wrong with my brain sometimes. Because I come up with some good things and then I just have some dumb moments. But I Googled it, and I'm like, why are they? But no, he is facing the front of the plane. And then I noticed they're not engines, they're propellers. So my father was rolling his eyes so hard he saw his brain for both my husband and me. I can only imagine if he was still here and I had texted him, because I would have. And I would have said, Dad, why is the wing on backwards? And he would have been like, what are you talking about? It's not. It's just this wonderful chance to kind of reconnect with my idiot brain sometimes and what my father's reaction would have been to this. But, you know, you just kind of laugh. You start goofing on it a little bit, like you said, because it's a good thing that the gremlin has rubber-soled feet. You look at him bending and pulling up the thing, and you can see the bottom of the shoe under the costume. It's kind of wonderful. You know, I think,
and I love the moments where you can actually see him like being pulled away by wires anytime somebody gets ready to potentially see him, and he just kind of floats away.
Yes, and he's just kind of like, you know, off into the wind, and it's just, you know, Shatner's hanging out of this window, and it's just like, oh, just let him go, like just keep going, lean a little further out, just go. It's just this wonderful thing, and then he sits up at the end to make sure he delivers his line. And I'm like, nobody who's that exhausted is going to get up and make sure they say their thing and then lie back down. It's just, it's this wonderfully cheesy, classic thing that I'm sure was terrifying at the time. But it's just been done and done and done where you can't take it seriously anymore.
Yeah, and I'm almost surprised at how well The Simpsons recreated it with the bus, and I love the ending of the Simpsons episode, because it's like they see the damage, and Bart's like, see, I was right all along, and then they were like, yeah, but we can't condone that kind of behavior, so we're still gonna send you to the crazy house.
Yep. You know what, if the Simpsons do it, they're gonna do it well. You know, like, as an English teacher, I teach Streetcar Named Desire. I'm obviously going to show a Streetcar Named Marge. I'm definitely, you know, I can't think of the Raven without, quote the Raven, eat my shorts. Like, I can't. These are some of my best, you know, references and just the intelligence of it. I mean, just not to mention a Streetcar Named Marge. You get both Hitchcock and The Great Escape in that episode, too. It's probably my favorite episode. If The Simpsons does it, you know it's going to be done well.
Yeah, and I think because of the Simpsons episode, I was almost a little surprised that it does have a glimmer of a happy ending, because we don't see it in the actual episode, but the closing narration implies that William Shatner's character is vindicated after the episode is over. Like, once they see the damage, then he'll be vindicated.
Hopefully.
Yeah, we don't see it, but I think it is implied. But I think I'm glad that I watched this, but it is hard to look back at this specific one without just the silliness of the concept, and just how many times it's been parodied and picked apart, and it just, you lose a lot of the tension.
Definitely.
Because of that, but it was still good to watch, and there are definitely good moments. I think the first half holds up a lot better than the second half.
I agree. I absolutely agree. The second half gets a little silly.
Yeah, but I'm happy that I watched it, and I'm looking forward to watching a few more episodes as I finish out the rest of this season with the last Jordan Peele episode, Replay. I always forget if it's Replay or Rewind.
I'm not helpful there. I'm sorry, I don't know.
But once again, I'd like to thank you for joining me today, and as well as on the last episode.
Yeah, it's been super fun. I'm really glad I got to chat with you about these.
And why don't you go ahead and let everybody know where they can find you online?
Sure. So you can check us out at the Siblist, Siblist. We are housed on Anchor FM, but you can find us on Spotify and Apple and Google, and, grab us in your favorite podcatcher. And I'm also on Between the Scares with Jason Soto. We talk about every film that Jason Blum and Blumhouse have produced. And you can find me, if you're interested, at Lisa Pass, LISAPAS 220 on Twitter, although I'm a teacher and most of my tweets are teacher-based. So that might not be so interesting as far as podcasting goes, but hey, maybe you're an educator and you want to follow a fellow educator. Teacher Twitter is definitely a thing, so just throw that out there.
And all those links will also be in the show notes if you're interested. And as always, I am Bubbawheat, and you can find me at flightstights@movienights.com. You can find me on Twitter at Bubbawheat. You can find this show, It's Time to Rewind, on Anchor.fm, as well as anywhere else that you listen to podcasts. We also have a Facebook group, It's Time to Rewind, a time loop group, that you can join and discuss episodes as they come out, as well as any other discussion about time loops in general. And until next time, I will still be right here, trapped in the Twilight Zone.
Submitted for your approval. Submitted for your approval.
Another dimension.
Submitted for your approval.
Another dimension.
Light for your
Shadow. Another dimension.
Light for your
Shadow. Another dimension.
itself.
Light.
for your
Shadow.
approval.
Another Twilight Zone.
Submitted for your approval.
The Twilight Zone.
Submitted for your approval.
The Twilight Zone.
Leaving Mark Wheeler to spend an eternity in a prison of his own design. The inability, no matter how many tries he's given, to see beyond himself. An endless loop of solitary confinement here in the Twilight Zone.